minutes.
Okay. I move to amend the minutes to reflect that instead of Alderman Arnold in that paragraph, it should be Alderman Chevalier.
Second.
Second by Alderman Chevalier. All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor of approving the amendment to the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. All right, any further discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Next item up we have for business is the mayor's report. Don't have a lot to report being the holidays. Typically try to avoid doing too much city stuff, but I have a couple of items I'd like to mention, report to the board. On Friday the 22nd, I was invited to speak and to be interviewed at Horizon Elementary School, which was formerly the upper elementary school here in Smithville. They invited me to come in and ask me some questions about being mayor, and then at their just before recess assembly, they invited me to stand up and be interviewed about what it takes to be the mayor. And I have to tell you, as exciting as these board meetings are, I'd much prefer to be out doing things like that. But it was a great experience, and hopefully the kids enjoyed it as well. On Wednesday, December 22nd, I attended the City Administrator Search Committee meeting, and I will ask Alderman Blomker to be reporting on that meeting shortly. A few upcoming events we have this Thursday is the Planning and Zoning Commission. We invite all to attend that if they would like. Also on Monday the 8th, we still planning for a work session on the 8th?
Yes.
Okay, good. And then we have a search committee meeting immediately following that. Is that correct, Alderman Blomker?
That is correct.
Okay, just want to verify that. And then on Wednesday, January the 10th, will be the Chamber of Commerce lunch, and I would invite all of you to attend that if possible. And in fact, I will most likely not be able to attend that lunch, and so if there's any of you who would like to give the city report, please volunteer and talk to me after our meeting this evening. Last thing to report on, we have a new officer here, and we are going to be swearing him in, and so I will be doing that. So Officer Craven, if you'll come up here and join me. All right, we'll move on to our next item of business. We have committee reports. First of all, we're going to talk about the search committee report. Alderman Blomker, if you would.
All right. As the mayor mentioned, we met the week of Christmas briefly to go through and look at the information compiled by SGR as part of their meetings and interviews with the 25 sitting community leaders. First of all, I want to thank those who participated in that, provided a lot of great feedback and input. So thank you to everyone who helped ensure that we were able to put together an accurate position profile. That is item number 9 this evening, so we'll be looking to approve that, which would then kick off the process of advertising that position this evening and starting hitting other websites tomorrow and through the next couple days if it's approved this evening. And so with that, if there are any questions, be happy to address it either now or during item number 9.
Okay. Any questions for Alderman Blomker? We can save them also for a little bit later. Thank you, Alderman Blomker. Alderman Booth.
Yeah, the school board met on December 20th. Some of the highlights from that particular meeting is their 2017 audit. No significant findings, only the only minor issue of separation of duties, which is a pretty common thing, actually. The new school is dried in, so even though we have cold weather, they're probably still working feverishly on the insides of the new school. And of course, as many of us know, there was a school board resignation over a controversy with some of the voting issues during one of their meetings. I won't get into the school board's issues, but I will say there are some lessons to be learned, especially here, since we occasionally do similar things. And one of those is, if we ever have a moment to introduce electronic voting, let's not do that. It's just prone to I don't know where the error is, but usually 30 minutes of every meeting is spent messing with the electronic system, so there's some issues there. And we've recently started compiling a lot of stuff underneath our consent agenda, which is not really that bad, especially with the school board. I mean, I'm looking at the consent agenda from this last meeting. There's 9 items on there, so to be able to consolidate all that stuff and approve it all at once is a big thing, but that's also where their current issues arose from, is having too much in that consent agenda and then just arbitrarily saying yay, and then having that thing become an issue. So as we start to consolidate things under the consent agenda, I just ask that staff and the board be very aware of what's in there and before you render a vote on it.
Well, it's the goal of the consent agenda to have items on the consent agenda that are pretty standard items, approvals that are needed. Anytime there is a potential controversial or a conflict, we try not to put those on the consent agenda, but sometimes that happens, and all it takes is a simple motion to put it down later for regular discussion. So, yeah, that's our goal with the consent agenda. Very good. Any other discussion? Okay, thank you for your report. Any other committee reports?
EDC.
Alderman Blomker, you're on again.
Thank you. It's nice to be called on twice this evening. The EDC met, walked through a variety of different topics, talked a little bit about the different business happenings here in the city, but spent a little bit of time talking through the special event assistance application and walking through that process to make sure it matched what we wanted to do. And then also coming forth at some point will be a set of bylaws for that committee. So there's not really a true bylaws that address how that committee is handled. So as we've had a change of committee chairman, and then, you know, how do we handle if a committee chairman's gone? When are there standard elections? The staff did a lot of great work on bringing forth some recommendations on kind of borrowing from planning and zoning to say, you know, here's some things that we might be able to do to kind of make things a little bit more standardized. So that will require board approval at some point when we get there. But I want to thank the members of the committee as well as the staff who did a lot of work to make sure that those kind of all came together.
Very good. Thank you. I think that's it on the committee reports. We'll move on to item number 6 for staff report. Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mayor. The staff report in the packet is nearly complete, nothing significantly different. I would highlight to you, I've given, obviously with the weather, the temperature has certainly let us know we're in winter. Luckily for us, we haven't had the snow. We do have on the website a picture that identifies how's the best way for each homeowner to shovel their drive and the area near their drive, so that when the snow plows do come through, they're not plowing their drive and then having it filled back up with a windrow of snow. So if they clear a little bit in front of it, it allows that windrow from the plow to empty before it gets to their drive. And we're updating the policy related to that at this point as well. The one we have, written policy, is from 1997, and it talks about 2 trucks and a bunch of roads that are inside the city completely that the county used to do. So we're just updating that. That's an internal staff policy, maintaining all the priorities that we always do. We're not changing any of that. It's just cleanup stuff. That's going on. I think it's important. I've spoken to some of the aldermen at other meetings after we did the first bit of information. There's been several questions related to the water payments and cycles for the water payment stuff. I've got some data here. It's written in the report, but it's also here related to primarily bank checks. When they come in, if you pay online bill pay through your bank, and when those checks arrive. As you can see, we had 301 of them come in for the month of December, from December 11th on, and 47 of those were late. Some of them were put in late, some of them just came late. So 27 different banks. We don't feel comfortable this data is sufficient, so we are continuing on a daily basis to track all of these numbers so that we can give you a more accurate, here's what's happening and when. We are not keeping further track of the number of banks. As you can see, there were 27 different banks in that system. At $500 a pop, it's about $13.5 on an annual basis. So when we get down to having enough data, we'll be making a full presentation at another board meeting. Lastly, the only other item I wanted to bring up is the weather impacts. It's been bitterly, bitterly cold. I sent out an email to you all today to remind you to be careful coming in the back of City Hall because of a water break. This cold has impacted our daily operations in the last week and a half from the standpoint that we weren't able to, or were not willing to risk freezing our water meters for folks that had to be shut off or reread or anything. We just estimated those folks and moved on, simple because we open the lid, cold gets in, it'll freeze pretty quick. We didn't want to take that risk. It's been more prevalent in other communities. If you watch the news over the weekend, several communities had major water breaks. We have 2, one at the back of City Hall and one out front. The one out back, they will be digging on tomorrow, so under 10 degrees, it'll be cold. They're going to be moving forward with it anyway. The cold weather is causing us equipment difficulties. Not only us, some of our contractors having the same problems. So hopefully this heat wave coming on for this weekend will actually get over freezing. Might help us out a bit there. The biggest thing from my perspective, the biggest weather impact is the impact on staff and their risk. As you know, being out when the wind's blowing and it's 10 below wind chill, it doesn't take long before you have a serious damage to your skin or serious injury. And if you've got somebody with breathing issues, that cold weather and wind will drop them. So we've got a lot of policies in place addressed with that. I bring that up because we're going to have guys in 5 to 10 degree weather standing in a hole full of water. So don't be surprised if you hear reports that there are 7 or 8 guys standing around while one guy's in the hole. If the guy in the hole gets wet, he gets out and goes inside and gets dried off. Somebody else has to get in. But they'll be wearing wet weather gear and water gear both to protect them from that, because when you get wet in 10 degree weather, it happens even quicker. So that's all we've got. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Hendricks?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Oh, yeah, and the city clerk does have an additional question or comment. She reminded me I forgot something. I placed on your desk, based upon a email or a Facebook post, something that I thought was interesting. I knew we had it. It took me a while to find it, and it's the business startup checklist. We have it on our website as a document. Right now, it's incredibly difficult to find. We're going to be working on resolving that issue. Before we relocate it, I'd ask that if you all can, take a look at it and suggest comments or provide comments or suggest changes associated with it in the next week or so. And if you can have those ready for us Monday's meeting, we can get those added. I think if we get some more eyes on it, it'll probably be better. If anything's confusing or whatever, but we're trying to update this for 2018 as we're moving forward. The current version that was on there, the one you have has been tweaked to add some changes, but if there's more stuff, please let us know that. We want to get the best checklist up there as possible.
Thank you. And board members, if you'd review that checklist, if you can, before our meeting on Monday, we'll look at changes. Alderman Blomker?
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. I appreciate this. As I think I helped kind of trigger this, I was speaking to one of our business leaders who was expanding to another community, and they were nearly delayed in their opening because of not knowing what all things they had to have in order to get the proper permits to get opened. And so I thank you for this and wonder if we might take it back to the EDC and have those folks look at it as well, because I know, sometimes, in order to get your liquor license, you have to get approval from these different places, and you also have to show XYZ and those details. I don't know if they're in the links that are clicked here behind, but I think that would be great.
And we can certainly do that as well.
Yes, I think that'd be
It's part of the EDC strategic plan.
Right.
So.
Very good. Thank you, Jack. Let's move on to item number 7. Alderman Booth.
Yeah, I move to approve Bill number 2783-17, Capital Improvement, Sales Tax, and Bond Election for its second reading.
Second by Alderman Chevalier. Any discussion? Just want to let you be aware, board members, if there is any questions, we have Todd Goffey here, who's our financial advisor relative to this. He's here to answer any questions. Is there any discussion or questions that any of the board members would like to ask Mr. Goffey this time?
I do. Todd.
Come on up, Todd. Oh, I apologize. Yeah, but we'll call you back. I apologize for that. Thank you for reminding me of that, Linda. Ed Halke, if you want to come up and talk about this issue, please state your name and address for the record and then address the board.
Sure. Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Board. My name is Ed Halke at 1707 Northeast 181st Street, Smithville, Missouri, 64089. One of the issues I wanted to talk about tonight was the half-cent sales tax. So I don't know if I'll save the rest of the topics for afterwards, if that's okay.
Yep.
At the end. Regarding this half-cent sales tax, my concern regarding this is this the correct time to do this? Put it before voters. My concern is that recently, in 2016, the city raised its the tax levy. A few months later, the school board did their property taxes. This year, the county raised its levy on the taxes, and also you guys, as a board, approved a 1-cent sales tax for the TIF. And so, my question is, before, when I was a member of this board 4 or 5 years ago, I know it projected that we were going to do the road transportation district first as a step, and then move on to the sales tax. I just caution, because of the fact, if you look from a perspective, last year you were 200,000 to 300,000 over budget. This year you guys are going to be 600,000 to 700,000 over budget, and going to voters saying that you're spending nearly over $1 million into our reserves, and then going to them for the half-cent sales tax may not look too good to voters. So I just caution you, if this is the correct time, maybe for the sales tax, maybe approach the road district tax first, and then go after the half-cent sales tax. That's all I have to say regarding this comment. Thanks.
Thank you. And just as far as the clarification, the road district is not an additional tax at all. We're actually recouping about $100,000 a year off the proposed road district. Smithville is the only city in Clay County that doesn't have a road district, so all the road tax we currently pay is distributed across all the other cities and to the county.
I understand that. Basically, before the Board of Todd would go for the road district tax first, so that way it doesn't cost taxpayers, and then show goodwill, and then basically go after sales tax.
Right.
So that I just,
well, and again, the road district, the only thing that can be used on is roads.
Exactly.
Whereas on this proposed sales tax, as you look at it, we're replacing a bridge, we're doing some other things relative to that. So those are, although they may be related, they're not part of the same. We're not imposing any tax on the road district at all.
yeah, I just wanted to caution you, just kind of perception out there as far as some of the things that I've heard. As far as here you are spending up to $1 million regarding if the projection from the last meeting was $600,000-700,000 deficit for this spending year, on top of the other, then going after a sales tax. This is the perception. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on this. I think Alderman, did somebody raise their hand?
Mr. Arnold.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Arnold.
Okay, I just had a question of Todd.
Very good.
There are predictions about interest rates over the next 3 to 5 years going up. At least that's what I've heard. And I'm not going to put you on the spot by having you make a prediction. But I think we have to keep that in mind, because if we delay this thing, we pay more interest if market rates go up for interest. If we delay the bond issue a year or 2 years, in addition to not getting the stuff done, we wind up paying more interest, correct?
Correct.
Also, if we were to issue these bonds in several different issues, let's say we issued it in 3 different issues over the next 3 to 5 years or next 2 to 5 years, whatever, to save some interest, and interest rates did go up, we would possibly be looking at discounting those bonds, which would in fact cost us more interest. Possibly. So maybe our best approach would be to go ahead and get those bonds issued, take the cash, invest it someplace as a hedge, assuming interest rates do in fact go up.
That's right.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that.
Yeah, I mean, that's interest rate risk, and I mean, you've got that between now and whenever the bonds would get issued, and the longer that time period is, the greater the risk, in my opinion.
Right. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Alderman Arnold. Any other questions or comments for Todd at this point? Any other discussion on this bill? Alderman Booth.
I'll just simply add, I've heard similar comments that were brought forward earlier about, is this the right time? A lot of people are asking for money, and I'm not saying whether or not everybody would agree this is a good thing or a bad thing, but this is one of the easiest votes I can actually take, in that we're not actually voting to approve it, we're letting the public vote to approve it. So let them have their voice. If they say no, then it doesn't happen. If they say yes, then we can make it happen. So unfortunately, the timing is, a lot of people are asking for money, but I don't ever see that stopping. So let's let Smithville speak to this and go from there.
Very good. Other discussion? Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Blomberg?
Aye.
Alderman Booth?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson? Aye. Alderman Arnold?
Aye.
Alderman Chevalier?
Aye.
Alderman Moore? 6-0.
Motion carries. Mr. Hendricks, would you please read the bill?
An ordinance calling an election in the city of Smithville, Missouri.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8 on the agenda. Alderman Moore.
Second.
Second by Alderman Booth. Discussion. Clerk, please call roll.
Alderman Wilson? Aye. Alderman Booth?
Aye.
Alderman Blomberg?
Aye.
Alderman Moore? Aye. Alderman Chevalier?
Aye.
Alderman Arnold?
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Mr. Hendricks, would you please read the bill?
An ordinance amending the fiscal year 2018 operating budget to add $317,400 to the expenditure budget of the Utilities Department of the Combined Water and Wastewater Systems Fund.
Thank you. Item number 9. Alderman Blomker.
I move to approve Resolution 556, the position profile for the city administrator.
Second by Alderwoman Wilson. Since you made the motion, Alderman Blomker, you have first shot to discuss it.
Certainly. At the very end of your packet is the actual position profile. There are several details in here that kind of line out different things from compensation that you've already reviewed and approved, but also a couple other details that are relevant to this discussion, including discussion on residency of this position. So something I wanted to bring up and be clear with the board is the strong suggestion from SGR, as well as a discussion that was had at the search committee, was that we don't require residency, but take that into account as we move forward. We believe that we have a lot of very highly qualified candidates for this position, and if the individual, lived in the area and their kids were established in school, that we might want to give them time to get there, and might even want to consider whether we require that at all, but certainly would require that they be active and engaged and involved in the community. That is obviously something that is of important to bring to you and make sure you're aware of. The search committee worked through this, as well as Mr. Davis did bring this up with the different folks as throughout their interviews. So I think this is a well thought out and well brought forward recommendation. With that, then, the search committee at their next meeting needs to go through and look at the ordinance and the job description to make sure that we tie things in appropriately. So that's our next step with that. But wanted to make sure you were aware of that issue in this position profile, and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Alderman Moore.
Well, that's one of the things I noticed in there. One of the questions I had about that was Smithville handles ordinance requiring the city administrator to live within Smithville. And if so, would we have to change that before we can approve this, or change it after we approve it?
This is just a job description profile, but that's certainly something that the committee has already addressed, and in the coming weeks we will, assuming this is approved, so we can start the search, that will be an item that will come before the board, because we will have to change our ordinance to match the job description or ordinance to what's proposed here in the profile. If it's not approved tonight, then there'd be no need to change that ordinance. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's just a question.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, in my discussion with the committee as well as with Mr. Davis, he had indicated that in many of the cities where they formerly would require a residency requirement or have a residency requirement, that most of those cities are going away from that now, because you may have some very well qualified applicants who know the area, but as Alderman Blomker said, may have children in the neighboring school district or something, and that would eliminate possibly some very talented and local candidates from applying for that with that requirement. Other questions? Alderman Chevalier.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, as far as a residency requirement, there are some people in this community that are not going to be very happy with that, and I mean, I'm afraid that that may overshadow what could be a good quality candidate anyways if they continue to have that flack against them if they're not living here. So we need to make sure we take that into consideration.
Okay. Alderman Booth.
During the write-up of this, I know your team spent a lot of time on it, and you interviewed a lot of people. Can you give me an idea, just was about 60-70% for or against having resident? Because I know that was one of the biggest hang-ups was residency.
So I wasn't in on each and every one of those, but based on Kirk's recommendation and what he kind of heard from folks, they didn't feel that was that great of an issue as long as they were active and engaged and involved in the community. I'll personally share, I'm the CEO of a hospital in another community. I'm active and engaged and involved in the community, and my board has not had a problem and never once raised an issue. I'm vice president of chamber and do a whole bunch of things in that community and don't live there. Part of that's because my wife works in another community, so we kind of split the commute, and my child's well established in the school district here. So I do think they need to be active, engaged, and involved in the community, and I think we can make sure we're clear about that. And I think we are from kind of how we try to lay this out. But as the mayor stated, he highly recommended that a lot of folks were going away from that. But, ensuring that they understood the clear issue of you do need to be a leader in the community, you need to be active, engaged, and very much involved and a participant in all the issues going on in the community.
Very good. Other questions or comments? All in favor of approving Resolution 556, City Administrator Position Profile, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Just an FYI to the board members, since this motion has passed this evening, we actually will be posting for the position tomorrow, and that will be open until about February, about 4 or 5 weeks, I believe. February 3rd or something like that. At any rate, we've already got that planned out, but so you may hear of some inquiries regarding this position here fairly quickly, but we will be posting that.
Yeah, February 9th, and if you do get inquiries, please push them to the city website or to SGR's website. The city website will take them to the SGR website. Our goal is we want everything to go through SGR. They will rank them A, B, and C candidates, and then bring forward those folks that here are your A candidates, here's your kind of borderline folks that you may want to look at, and go forward from there.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Next item, public comment. We have, we'll give Mr. Holke, we'll get back to you now. So if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record, and then address the board.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Board. My name is Ed Holke, 1707 Northeast 181st Street, Smithville, Missouri. Just a couple more things here. One regarding the garbage company. I know you guys recently raised a small amount for the garbage company, but I hope that you can approach them. I have an issue with them. 52 weeks. There's 52 weeks in a year, and basically we have 2 weeks for big bulky items. And I contacted them this fall outside of our bulky item week for a pickup, and in Deaf and Ball and in gyms I could pay a nominal fee like $20, and they would come and pick up my item. They contacted WCA, and I was talking to the lady on the phone, and she got to a supervisor and said our contract with the city doesn't allow that. So Deaf and Ball and gyms allowed us to just pay a small nominal fee for a pickup, but our current contract with this company does not. So I was hoping that the board would take a look into that, and the city would take a look into that and see if we can get that changed. So our citizens out there that do have these bulky items outside the times that we have it don't have to. I had to pay an additional company to come out and haul away my stuff. So as we're transforming the house, so I appreciate if the city and them would take a look into that as we look into that contract. And then the only other thing I want to say is that I appreciate the support from the citizens. This will be likely the last time you guys ever see me at a meeting like this, ever in my life. I did file for a mayor race on December 12th, but we recently found out through one of my family members has a illness that doesn't have a cure. And also, I had some recent health scares over this past year, and so I withdrew 2 days later. And basically, I want to thank this board and the mayor and everybody that does the job. I know it's a tough job, and it's a volunteer of the service. And I want to thank the residents of Smithville that contacted me, that said that they would go door to door with me and everything. I initially said yes, but unfortunately, I have to say no. It's time to spend time with my family. And so I just want to appreciate all the support I had, and appreciate the residents in this board for your hard work. And being a former member, I understand the time commitments and the things that go away from your family. But again, I just hope that in the future, in 2018, that this board and everybody, you hug your family a little bit more, and you guys smile a little bit more, and continue to make Smithville a great city. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holke. We have Joe Buchanan relative to Stonebridge flooding.
You ought to know who I am without reading that. Thank you for letting me come up again. Again, we're inquiring about the flooding that we had in August the 21st. I know it takes time and a lot of effort for people to get together and with the holidays and everything to come up with any ideas or any recommendations as far as to what can be done or what could be done with the flooding that we had this past year. Now, taking into consideration this is kind of a cold day to even think about spring coming, but it's going to be here before we know it. And even though I personally have flood insurance now, so I don't care if it floods, okay? But a lot of other people don't and can't afford it. And we need the help. What can we do to help you help us? And that's where I'm standing. I know you said you would send us an email or a letter when you
Yeah, and I
come up with
apologize.
any resolutions, but we haven't seen anything as of yet, so.
Well, we will send that out. In discussion with both city staff and our engineers, whenever we have that much water coming down, we could spend $1 million on flood control measures and it wouldn't do any good because of the amount of rain concentrated in such a small area in such a short amount of time. It'd be very similar to trying to control the flooding that we had seen in Houston, Texas from hurricanes and things like that. When we have that much water coming down in any area, it doesn't matter what a great job we have because of our terrain, because we're relatively flat and we have that much water coming down. And I mentioned this to you when I came out there and visited with you and your board. One of the biggest challenges we have is even if we could get that water off your property, there's no place for it to go.
Well, I realize that, but at some point in time, something, in my personal opinion alone, there needs to be something done, and I'm not sure what all can be done, but I think there are some things that can be done. It's just a matter of whether or not people want to do them to help us or whatever. And I do appreciate any input that you guys can give us as to what can and can't be done.
Well, certainly one of the options would be for the residents to obtain flood insurance because since that area, I don't think that's in the floodplain, is it?
No, it's
Jack?
not.
Residents can buy flood insurance,
Yes,
which would
they
help
can.
remedy the impact it has upon the residents. As a city, we can't take out flood insurance on behalf of any residents or anything like that as a group. So that'd
Right,
be
and that makes
actually
sense.
illegal for us to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, the HOA can't even take out flood insurance for the individuals. It has to be up to
Correct.
that individual, which I did check into that.
Yeah.
But with the amount of buildings and the school improvements, and I'm not saying anything bad about the school because I know the school needs to improve and it needs to get bigger. But I mean, something's got to give somewhere. And
Well,
buying
again-
flood insurance and getting flooded 2 or 3 times a year for some of those people, that's not fair either for them.
Well, and I understand, and that's the purpose for the option of purchasing flood insurance is for those events in which somebody may not live in a floodplain and they want to do that because they live near a body of water. And I'm not an engineer or anything, but my guess is with the amount of water that wasn't coming even if you took away all the water coming off the school property, all that other water coming down from the property just to the west of Stonebridge,
Right.
my guess is we would still have the same problem.
I'm
But
sure at
again,
some point we would, yes.
I don't know if that's the case. Alderman Chevalier.
We have talked to an engineer. We haven't got a report back as of yet as to, there's a lot of options. One, build we have a runoff on one of the side of the buildings, make that deeper. Well, I don't know how much deeper we can make it without, causing more damage, because it'll be right out more into the street. Bigger outlets, which those were replaced 2 years ago without our, due to a sewer line breakage, which we had no clue they were doing until it was already done. My personal opinion at the time, and I think I mentioned it to Jack, that I didn't think those 3 culverts were going to be big enough to handle the water flow. And ever since, and I hate people who do this, I just hate it, that when they say, well, I don't think it's going to work, because it doesn't. Ever since they have been put in, I personally have flooded. Not in my house. This last rain, it was in my house. But it is into the driveway. It's about halfway up my leg in the driveway. And it never happened until those 3 culverts were put in. Maybe that's part of the solution. I don't know. And I don't know about the rest of it, other than there's so much growing and growth that the pond can't handle it.
All right. I will commit to you that we will get you an email or some form of communication before the end of the month.
Thank you very
Before the end of
much.
January,
I
okay?
appreciate all your help.
Thank you. That's all the public comment we have this evening. We'll move on to item number 11 on the agenda, new business from the floor for future meetings. Alderman Chevalier.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. I saw this came across my desk the other day about Old Rock Appreciation Day. I was curious if the city...
Could you say that again?
Old Rock Appreciation Day, January 7th. I just want to know if we can recognize that somehow.
What? Forgive my ignorance, Alderman Chevalier. What's an Old Rock appreciation?
I just saw it came across Twitter, and I was just curious if that's something we should celebrate.
I've never heard of it before, so you know, if there's a recommendation from one or more board members that you'd like me to issue a proclamation, I'll certainly consider it. But that's something I've never done before.
I move to adjourn.
I need a second. Second by Alderman Moore. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned.